Well, we've reached a new phase in Genesis. We've reached chapter 25. And if you see chapter 25 in verse 19, it starts a new Toledot. Remember, Genesis consists of 10 parts, 10 chapters, as were. And each new chapter, each new saga begins with the words, "These are the generations of," Toledot, right? It's a fancy way of saying it. So we've left Abraham and Sarah, and we've even left Ishmael, and now we're following this line, this family tree. We're focusing on the branch of promise. Remember, we got the seed of the woman through whom the serpent crusher will come. That's what Genesis focuses on. And we've met the chosen son, haven't we? It's not Ishmael, it's Isaac. So look at verse 19. These are the generations of Isaac, Abraham's son. Abraham fathered Isaac, and Isaac was 40 years old when he took Rebekah, the daughter of Bethuel, the Aramean of Paddan Aram, the sister of Laban, the Aramean, to be his wife. And we covered Isaac and Rebekah's marriage union last week, didn't we? That was the prequel. Well, now their story kicks into gear. And their story is centred around their twin sons. Sons who from the outset are going to do battle with one another. They're going to struggle. They're going to wrestle. So we've got famous battle between Jacob and Esau. Twins who terrorise one another. They are rivals. And in their sibling rivalry, we see the whole story of Scripture play out. So between these two brothers, there is struggle. And the author shows us this struggle in 4 short scenes, right, in this chapter. We dip into these boys' lives 4 times over a period of 20 or so years. So 4 scenes, 4 points, and we'll draw our lessons as we go. Point number 1, struggle in the womb, verses 21 through to 23. Now, between verses 20 and 21, there is a 19-year gap. Isaac and Rebekah have been happily married for a very long time. But, like father, like son, Isaac, like Abraham, is going to have to wait, going to have to be patient before he gets an heir. He's going to have to live by faith, not by sight. Because look, he's got a problem, verse 21. Isaac prayed to the Lord for his wife because she was barren. Now, I think it's unlikely that Isaac only started praying 19 years into his marriage for a son. No, he realises early on, just like his own mother Sarah, his wife Rebekah is having trouble conceiving. So for nearly 2 decades, Isaac faithfully prays to God, begging him for children, reminding God of his promises. Reminding God that he promised Abraham, look, through this line, that all the nations of the earth are going to be blessed. End of verse 21, the Lord granted his prayer, and Rebekah, his wife, conceived. Like London buses, you wait for ages and then 2 turn up at once. Well, Isaac and Rebekah conceived twins. And in utero, in the womb already, these 2 individuals don't get along. Verse 22, the children struggled together within her. And the Hebrew word translated struggle, it denotes violence and aggression. So these 2 babies are punching and kicking each other with their half-formed little limbs. They're trying to crush one another in the womb. And she said, if this is thus, why is this happening to me? Or in other words, what good is this pregnancy? Children are supposed to bring joy and life, but these 2 are going to kill each other, and in the process, they're going to kill me. So she went to inquire of the Lord. Isaac and Rebekah would have had their own altar, or they would have been using the altar that Abraham had used and set up. So they take their sacrifice to the Lord and they inquire of the Lord. They want to talk to him. And the Lord speaks, verse 23. The Lord said to her, 2 nations are in your womb, and 2 peoples from within you shall be divided. The one shall be stronger than the other. The older shall serve the younger. God had promised Abraham and Isaac that they would father nations. And now God confirms this to Rebekah. These aren't just normal babies. These two boys are going to become two groups of people, two people groups. Esau is going to become the father of the Edomites, whereas his younger brother Jacob is going to become the nation of Israel. It's from Jacob that 12 sons, 12 tribes are going to be born. But we're to look further afield than just Genesis, aren't we? Because God prophesies that Edom is going to serve Israel. The older shall serve the younger. And this is precisely what transpires over the course of history. Edom and Israel are always at loggerheads, but it's always Israel that comes out on top. So in Exodus 15, Moses identifies the Edomites as a clan that is going to have to be dealt with. A clan under God's judgment, with the idea that the Israelites are going to conquer them and subdue them. And centuries later, when David takes the throne, he goes to war with the Edomites and he very nearly wipes them out. Only a couple are left, a remnant. And then at the very end of Old Testament history, there's numerous prophecies regarding the complete destruction of Edom. The clearest is in Obadiah chapter 1 verse 18. It says this: the house of Jacob, so the house of Israel, shall be a fire, the house of Joseph a flame, and the house of Esau stubble or wood. They, Jacob and Joseph, shall burn them and consume them, and there shall be no survivor for the house of Esau, for the Lord has spoken. Let's apply this briefly for our own day and age. Verses like this show us, don't they, how precious the unborn are to God. No conception is an accident, is it? Notice what God doesn't say to Rebekah in verse 23. He doesn't say, the twins in your womb are just a bunch of cells. They're not alive. They're not really as important as you, Rebekah. Oh, no, by the way, Rebekah, if they're hurting you, if carrying these children is going to be awkward, or having them is going to get in the way of your career, well, feel free to remove them. We can give you a pill over the counter for that. After all, I mean, they're not really humans yet, are they? These are the lies that are spread by so-called health professionals in our own day and age, in our own country. God knows these two individuals in the womb personally. He created them. He gave them life. So only God should decide when these lives should end. And he's planned out what each of these boys is going to be like. And he knows what children each one of them will in turn have. So what a tragedy then that human beings are so willing and so ready to snuff out their offspring before they've even taken a first breath. People these days dehumanise the unborn, but God knows everything about them and they're very precious to him. Okay, then a struggle in the womb. Second point, struggle at birth. Verses 24 to 26. Verse 24, when her days to give birth were completed, behold, there were twins in her womb. The first came out red, all his body like a hairy cloak. So they called his name Esau. Some babies, when they arrive in the world, are very hairy. This still happens today. I checked online. Some babies are covered in a very thin layer of hair. Well, baby Esau is so hairy, he looks like he's wearing a red velvet jacket. So what do we call this boy? Well, there's only one name that will do. We'll call him Esau. We'll call him Red. Verse 26, afterwards his brother came out with his hand holding Esau's heel. So his name was called Jacob. Why is little baby Jacob hanging on to his brother's foot as the two of them are born? Well, it's because Jacob wants to be number one. He wants to be the firstborn. He wants to be the child of promise. So he's grasping at his older brother's foot. And that's where Jacob gets his name. It means the one who follows closely. You can't even quite get it in English. It's like the one who's on the heel of. So we say, oh, they're hot on the heels of someone. i.e. you're chasing someone with the intention of overtaking them. Well, that's Jacob's name. He's the one who supplants the follower who replaces, if you like. Isaac was 60 years old when Rebekah bore them. Okay, quiz time. Wake you all up. There's a theme in Genesis regarding brothers, isn't there? So let's think back through the first brothers. Who are the first brothers we meet in Genesis? Cain and Abel. Who's the oldest? Cain. Who comes out on top when we see Cain and Abel? Cain comes out on top. He kills Abel, doesn't he? But hang on, does Cain come out on top? Who's Cain up against next? Who's the third child of Adam and Eve? Or the one, Seth? Seth comes out on top. He's the younger brother. Cain is thrown out to the east, isn't he? To the land of nods. Next major pair of brothers we met are Ishmael and Isaac. Who's the oldest? Ishmael. Who comes out on top? Isaac. Where does Ishmael end up? Lara? He's thrown out. He's thrown out to the east, into the wilderness. He becomes a nomad in Arabia, southeast of Israel. And now we get two new brothers, twins in fact, Esau and Jacob. Before they're even born, they're quarrelling. But who's the oldest? Well, it's Esau. Who's going to be the more athletic, the stronger of the two? It's going to be Esau. But who's going to come out on top? It's going to be Jacob, isn't it? And the Edomites, where are they going to end up living? They're going to end up living east of the promised lands. Jacob's going to win not because he's smarter, not even because he's more morally upright, because he's not. He's going to come out on top because of God's grace. He is the chosen seed, the elected one. And this pattern of strength and weakness, of the strong representative of Satan wrestling with the chosen, seemingly weak one, well, it points us towards the ultimate battle, doesn't it? The ultimate struggle. One that culminates on a hill outside of Jerusalem, as the serpent fights and wrestles and crushes the king. So think about it. Who's older? Who's more established from a human point of view? The Pharisees, the scribes, the priests in all their finery, in all their robes, or this 30-year-old carpenter? They actually say to him, he's not even 50. What does he know? What can he teach us? Who's stronger? Who's got more clout? The Roman Empire, all of its armies and its magnificence, or this gentle, kind preacher? This man who won't even lift a hand up to block the slaps as they come down on his face. But who's going to come out on top? Well, it's going to be the mild-mannered number 2, isn't it? The second Adam. The second Adam is going to chase after the serpent and he's going to destroy him. And eventually the prince of the power of the air is going to be replaced by the Prince of Peace. See, the book of Genesis provides us with the whole blueprint, the whole pattern of God's salvation plan. Third point, struggle at home. Verses 27 to 28. When the boys grew up, Esau was a skillful hunter, a man of the field, while Jacob was a quiet man dwelling in tents. Isaac loved Esau because he ate of his game, but Rebekah loved Jacob. The schism between these brothers has now reached the parents, and we got two very different characters. But again, as we look at them, think about Genesis imagery. So here's a settlement, here's a community of God's people. Here's Isaac. Isaac is the only human being on earth that Yahweh will speak to and through. You could argue, what about the king of Salem? But let's ignore him for a minute. Let's say that Isaac is the only human being through which God communicates. Isaac's got an altar. He's a mediator. So at Isaac and Rebekah's camp, we've got a mini Eden, as it were. This is where God is hanging out. This is where God is communicating with people. But where does Esau like to hang out? Well, he doesn't feel at home near the Lord, does he? He spends his time in the field, in the wilderness, in the untamed, chaotic world. He's not interested in eating the sheep and the goats in the flock. He's out chasing down the unclean animals of the wilderness. Esau is a man who lives outside of the gates. In fact, look over at the very next chapter. Look at Genesis chapter 26. Genesis 26:34 says this: when Esau was 40 years old, he took Judith, the daughter of Beeri the Hittite, to be his wife, and Basemath, the daughter of Elon the Hittite, and they made life bitter for Isaac and Rebekah. Esau's a Cain character, isn't he? Cain takes his wife and he leaves with her. Esau grabs 2 Hittite wives. Again, he's not interested in the promise God made to Abraham. He doesn't share his grandfather's conviction that he shouldn't mix with the nations. Compare Esau to Jacob, though. Jacob was a quiet man dwelling in tents. Well, now we're reminded of Abraham, aren't we? Remember, Abraham, the man of faith, he wouldn't settle down. He wouldn't build a city or a castle. No, he lived in tents here because he looked for a heavenly country, a permanent home in heaven. Now, having said all this, we've got to understand that at this point, Jacob is not a man of faith. He doesn't know the Lord. But the pieces are beginning to fall into place. The author is preparing us for what's to come. He's leaving a trail of breadcrumbs, as it were. He's setting us up. What else do we know about Jacob? What job did Jacob have or end up having? He was a shepherd, right? He kept the flocks. That meant that, like Adam, he was subduing and ordering creation. So we've got one brother on the inside in God's family. We've got one brother on the outside. Well, something obvious and practical at this point to say is for parents and grandparents. Beware of showing favouritism to your children. Isaac and Rebekah had their favourites, didn't they? And each son was loved by the parent because of what the son did for them. Isaac loved Esau more than Jacob because maybe he liked eating wild boar more than he liked curried goat. Rebekah loved Jacob probably because he was around more. He's gentle, I can talk to him. He asks about my feelings and stuff. We have a good chat. And Jacob causes me less trouble. Esau's wives are a menace to me. Well, our children, our grandchildren, are going to have different personalities. You might find that one of your kids clicks with you more than another. But don't be an unwise parent. Don't fuel problems and rivalries that might already exist between your offspring. This is true for parents of young children like myself, but it's also true for those who've got grown-up children. Maybe one of your children has been very successful financially, whereas another, well, they're a bit of a drain. Maybe you feel, they're a bit of a disappointment. Maybe you're prouder of the smarter one. Maybe one of your grown-up children is a better parent than your other children, or their parental approach is more like yours. So you don't mind looking after one set of grandkids, but you'll make an excuse if you have to look after the others. This next bit's not a joke, right? Don't favour your children based on how much they look like you. I knew a Christian couple, right? They had 2 kids, and they clearly had favourites. The dad favoured the one who looked like him, and the mother favoured the one who looked like her. Ironically, none of them were particularly blessed when it came to looks, right? But it was bizarre. But it happens. Don't let it happen in your home. Take care that some attractive quality in one child does not cloud your mind and prevent you from treating all your children equally. Okay, fourth and final point, struggle at supper. Verses 29 to 34. Look at verse 29. Once, when Jacob was cooking stew, Esau came in from the field and he was exhausted. Esau said to Jacob, "Let me eat some of that red stew, For I'm exhausted. Therefore his name was called Edom. Now, there's nothing like a good bowl of lentil curry, is there? Keely makes a great lentil curry. And sometimes when I get in, I'll smell it. I'm like, oh, she's made lentil curry. And then I don't want to wait. I'm like, just give me it. It smells so good. When's dinner? How long am I going to have to wait for this? And more often than not, I'll be tucking in to my lentil curry. And Keely will say to me, how come you haven't poured yourself a drink? I think you haven't poured yourself a Vimto or something. And also, I was just so hungry. I was just so eager to eat this. I didn't have time to think about anything else. Plus, I knew you'd do it. Well, Esau is 5 times hungrier than I get on a Thursday night when it's lentil curry night. He's been stalking animals all day. He's probably run 15 to 20 kilometres in the hot sun. But he hasn't caught anything. And now his legs ache. And he's probably gotten to the stage where he's got a headache. He's probably seeing stars. Here's a red man, a redhead, hungry, exhausted. And he sees and smells some delicious red stew. The Hebrew word for cooked sounds very similar to the Hebrew word for hunt. Jacob is cooking or hunting a stew. So in this story, who is the real hunter? Is Esau out hunting wild animals, or is Jacob hunting his older twin? Is he baiting a trap for a starving animal? Esau sees the stew, and now Jacob has his prey exactly where he wants him. Esau says, oh brother, give me some of that stew, just a bowlful will do. And now Jacob goes in for the kill. Verse 31, Jacob said, sell me your birthright now. I've never bought a birthright. What is it? Well, the birthright is the special status that belonged to the firstborn son. It meant becoming the principal heir to the father's inheritance and becoming the head of the family. In other words, the chief. So the birthright meant you became the chief when the father died. And this birthright, particularly in Abraham's line, came with divine promises, didn't it? Both these young men would have known about the promises made to their grandfather. The promise that through his family line, in the future, the whole planet would be blessed. And Jacob says to Esau, I want that from you. I want you to give up your claim to your birthright. I want to have those blessings. Verse 32, Esau said, I'm about to die. Of what use is a birthright to me? Jacob said, swear to me now. So he swore to him and sold his birthright to Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau bread and lentil stew, and he ate and drank and rose and went his way. Thus Esau despised his birthright. Esau makes a common mistake among young men. He gives up future satisfaction for immediate gratification. He's after the short-term gain rather than long-term security, isn't he? But it goes deeper, doesn't it? The author says Esau despised his birthright. The idea here is that he treated it like trash. He treated it with contempt. He just tossed it aside. And all for what? For a little bowl of soup. How tragic. Think about Esau. Think about the type of man he was. He's the sort of man who loves eating good, manly meals. A bit of wildebeest, a nice bit of bison, a wild boar. Meaty, earthly, manly meals. But he sells his birthright for a little vegan side dish. What a fool. And of course, thinking about themes in Genesis, this isn't the first time in Genesis that we've seen human beings reject God's promises for a tasty treat, is it? Think about Adam and Eve. God tells them, you can live forever with me. You can inherit the whole earth. You, Adam and Eve, will be king and queen of creation. Just don't eat from that tree. Not yet. You are not ready for it yet. But for a small little snack that you'd stick in your child's lunchbox, Adam and Eve gave up their inheritance. So to close then, let's ask ourselves a question. Which twin are you? Which corner are you in, red or blue? In the red corner is Esau. And here's a man who's all about the now. He's all about instant gratification. He's not interested in 5 years' time or 10 years' time. He's definitely not interested in 100 or 1,000 years' time. In essence, Esau throws away a relationship with the Lord for what? For a bowl of soup. He was the heir. He was the man through which God would bless the nations. But Esau has no interest in anything beyond what was right in front of his eyes. Forget about the blessings. Forget about the nations. I want you to bless me. I want to be fed right now. I want to satisfy me. So I'll give up all that future stuff. And I mean, who's to say it's really real anyway? It's just some old-fashioned stuff Granddad's been banging on about. I'll roll the dice. I'll bet that now is more important than later. Well, is that you this evening? There's a relationship with the God of heaven that is open and available to you. His Son, Jesus Christ, offers you a wonderful inheritance, a wonderful, fulfilling relationship with him. But Jesus tells us, if you follow him, you're not going to get everything you want immediately. Following Jesus means that your life will be a life of service, not self-gratification. Your life will be hard. You'll have to take up your cross and follow in Jesus' footsteps. As we heard this morning, you're going to have to walk in Christ's footsteps. You're going to have to imitate him. That means battling with your flesh, battling with Satan every day of your life. Being a Christian is going to be tough. The Christian looks like weak little Jacob, not big strapping Esau. Why would anyone follow Jesus then? Why would anyone lose their life for the sake of a Jewish carpenter? Well, Jesus tells us in Luke 16:24. Luke 16:24. Then Jesus told his disciples, if anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. For whoever would save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. And then Jesus says something very famous. What will it profit a man if he gains a bowl of stew or a really nice car, sexual pleasure with lots of attractive women, a nice big house in Blackheath, regular holidays to lovely exotic destinations, the position of partner in your law firm? No, Jesus says, what will it profit a man if he gains the whole world and still forfeits his soul? Or what shall a man give in return for his soul? This man Esau we've been talking about tonight, he's in the darkness. He's in hell. His later was far more important than his now. But he gave up his relationship with Yahweh. He sold his soul for a measly bowl of soup because he didn't really believe what had been promised. He despised his birthright. Well, Jesus stands tonight in front of you with his arms out, ready to save you. Don't despise him. Don't give him up for the empty, trashy bowls of soup that this world has to offer. Believe his promise. Come to him and be saved. Which twin are you going to be? Jacob or Esau? Which corner are you going to bet on? Red or blue? Where are you going to end up?